Hey gamers, this is Patrick and Jason. Welcome to RPGaymer Episode 3, a podcast about retro revivals.
We've actually talked about this a few times during our streams, but I wanted to take some time to really discuss with you, Patrick, retro game revivals. With games like Streets of Rage 4, which was pretty awesome, by the way.
Super fun.
And it was really, it was super well received. And we just saw today, actually, that there's going to be DLC for it, which is also super cool. And there's the upcoming TMNT game. I even saw today's a day for retro revivals. I even saw the announcement for the Alex Kidd enhanced remake, which is super great.
Fun.
I know. I'm so excited for that. It's going to be great. There's just been a bit of a surge, it seems, lately in retro-inspired games. Patrick, what do you think makes a game a retro revival?
Yeah, I think there has to be a clear distance between what a retro revival is and things that you might kind of constitute as their imposters. A retro revival is something that kind of like updates a game or a series without compromising its original style. I think our definition is going to be multi-layered, like there's going to be a lot of parts to it, but I think this is where you start. So updates could be things like game mechanics. It could be looks that don't drastically change the overall feel. Anything of those like main categories, I think, is something that really constitutes a retro revival. So it feels fresh and new, but it's still closely rooted to the original that you could put them side by side and still really feel like they're related. What about you?
I feel the exact same way. I was thinking the thing that makes the game a revival is some element of the past that is brought back to the future. I'm glad you brought up that it could be updated or modernized, essentially. If you're looking at a game like we just mentioned, Alex Kidd, it was on the Master System, I believe, way back when. I mean, there's only like 2 buttons and so much you can do with visuals, but there's a core design to it that makes an Alex Kidd game an Alex Kidd game. So I feel if you make a new one, you're probably pulling that idea back and making it new and modern with new visuals, new sounds, new controls. But at the core experience, it's that main game. Like, for example, if I was to say, oh, this is like a Mario game, like, you know what I mean by that, as opposed to saying
because Mario's amazing.
Right, exactly. As opposed to saying this is a side scroller, you might not know what I mean, or this is a shooter. Like, it could be a side scrolling shooter, it could be a first person shooter. Like, you don't know. I do want to make maybe you would say the same thing. There's a clear definition between a retro revival not being a port of a game. Would you feel similar to that as well?
Yeah, so we're starting to see a lot of resurgences of remasters, remakes, and spin-offs. And I don't think those games really classify a retro revival. So for example, last fall, I want to say, we saw the original Fire Emblem released. It was a NES title, and they didn't change too much with it. So it's basically the same game. We see this on iOS games as well. So Final Fantasy V, Final Fantasy VI, they get little facelifts, but they're still really just the same game. And 3D All-Stars, like, it's a great game. It's awesome to play. We're not knocking any of these, but they just don't quite fit that retro revival. How I kind of see it, we kind of have 2 different versions of what a retro revival is. It's either a continuation years later, or it could be something that could be constituted as a spiritual successor. I really want to talk about the continuation years later first, because as you've already brought up, we played Streets of Rage 4 on our stream. So to you, what is it about a continuation years later that really hits the nail on the head for being a retro revival?
That's a good question. I think it would be retaining the core value of that original game and not changing too much, I want to say. I feel like it's hard to say, because then you kind of get into the ground of the game being just a remaster, like a remake, and nothing else is changing. They just enhanced visuals. I think, though, we keep bringing up Streets of Rage 4, and 1, it's a good game, but 2, it really fits this idea.
Well, I think also, too, it's a sequel. Like, if you kind of think about it, it has that progression in the series, which is nice.
Yeah, totally. And I think that when there is a series that you're a part of, something that makes it a retro revival and continuing it years later is just moving that story forward. Like, we still have the same characters in Streets of Rage 4 that you saw in 1, 2, and 3 for the most part. While the story is probably very loosely connected to one another, at least they're still there, so you get the continuity. So you, as a fan of the series, can be like, oh, great, I can see Axel again, and and play those characters and really enjoy it for the lore and the character and world building. And then if you're a newer gamer, you can jump in and see this is what older games were kind of like, but I still feel at ease and at home because this looks really good, or it plays great on a PlayStation 4 controller as opposed to a Sega Genesis pad.
Yeah, I'm happy you said that, because I think one thing that's really important is it's the same game overall. 90s games were pretty simple. They weren't very complex, so anyone could pick it up. But the combat is a lot more engaging, or mechanics, I would say, are just a little bit more engaging. What I wouldn't want to see in a retro revival that's like just a continuation is all of a sudden we have like a 2D side scroller beat 'em up, and now it's a 3D top down brawler, gauntlet style. It's just changing the concept completely. I don't think that's a retro revival. I think that's just like a completely it's a departure from the series. Continuations kind of fit that with that whole like continuity. It still really is the same game.
I agree with you, and I think that when a game does that and really changes its main genre, if you will, it's hard to classify it as a sequel or even a retro revival. Like it's just so different. And I feel like the biggest example I can think of is Fallout 3. I mean, it's a direct sequel in a sense to Fallout 2, which came out, I'm going to make up a number, like 10 years later. I don't even know. It might be later than that. But that game is so different from the isometric top-down view to a first-person shooter. But at the same time, it still feels like a Fallout game. Like, I feel like I'm in the same universe. I'm just doing something different. And not going to lie, they're probably never going to go back to that old style. But it's still good. So I agree with you in that it shouldn't really change the core mechanics of a game. But I guess asterisk, there's always some times where it can.
Sure, it can work. I think if a game doesn't quite, you go back and it's just so dated, it doesn't really work well anymore. You have to lift it up, you have to raise it up. But there are a lot of classic games that age well. They don't change that much. You can go back to them and they're always fun. And I think maybe it's more the changing it for the sake of changing it that I don't like. I completely agree with you where I love isometric RPGs if we're just talking about like Fallout, but I don't think that would have been a huge selling point to invite new gamers into the world, of the Wasteland. So yeah, I agree with you there. I think the other one that kind of maybe fits with this a little bit more, it's a spiritual successor. So why don't you talk about what a spiritual successor means to you?
A spiritual successor is a video game that may or may not be made by the original designer, company, developer of the first game, but there's a sequel that comes out. And that sequel probably has either the same characters or more likely completely different characters, but the mechanics stay the same. The biggest example I can think of that came out recently would be Bloodstained Ritual of the Night.
It's a pretty good game.
It's great. I love that game, actually. It's a spiritual successor to the Castlevania series. If you didn't know that, I don't know why you're playing it to begin with. But I think it was made by Koji Igarashi, one of the original designers for Symphony of the Night.
That's correct. Iga,
exactly. So that game takes the core mechanics of a game like Castlevania Symphony of the Night and places brand new characters, new storylines, and largely new elements too to kind of progress the game forward. But at its core, it really feels like you're playing a game in the vein of Castlevania. And that's probably the easiest way to define what a spiritual successor would be.
I kind of took it as it's an old game with a different fashionable sweater.
Yeah, exactly. It got what's it called? Upscaled or something like that.
It got
upcycled.
It got queer-eyed. So
there you go.
The queer eye of gaming is a spiritual successor. I really like the notion of a spiritual successor, maybe just a little bit more, because I think it gives a lot of room for new ideas that maybe the original creators would possibly like never have tried. So we're seeing a lot of things like we didn't see too much, if we're talking about Bloodstained, we didn't see crafting in Castlevania. There are just new mechanics that I feel like really pave way to be introduced. But like you said, at the core, you could still look at it and be like, that's basically a Castlevania game.
Something I wanted to discuss with you as well regarding spin-offs. Part of me thinks that they exist because the original game, let's just say, for example, Castlevania, got too large or too big, and the publisher or developer were not able to make changes to them. So, for example, if Symphony of the Night and the other Castlevania games are getting very popular, they kind of fit into a mold where you can't change mechanics. Like you can't change the characters, you can't add crafting systems, so on and so forth. So the series almost becomes stagnant. So then the spiritual successor is your actual follow-up where you can do new things and try new mechanics that might or might not mesh with the original sort of flow of a game. Do you kind of see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Have you seen that too?
Yes, actually, and I'm happy that you asked that because I'm thinking about Mega Man and how maybe after Mega Man 7 on the SNES, you're our resident Mega Man expert, so I'm deferring to you. Is that correct? Like that was
SNES, PS1, Saturn. Yeah.
okay. Huge departure for the series, but then we kind of get that spiritual successor in a way as we go back to Mega Man 9 and 10 because they are classically classic. Like they are so close to the original, but they found a way to make it very lively again.
Totally. I think that's wonderful. I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's exactly what I was thinking, where the series kind of got to a point it couldn't do what it was originally or what made it popular, so it kind of died off. And I think from Mega Man 8 to Mega Man 9, we're talking like 10 to 15 years.
Oh yeah, it's a big gap.
Yeah, and the game looks nothing like you would think. It's a retro inspired game, 2D or 8-bit graphics, 2D plane, and all the bells and whistles from an original Mega Man game.
So, what really led Jason and I into this topic was the fact that we are big beat 'em up fans, and as we said, we've played Streets of Rage. We saw the new Ninja Turtles trailer. We're like super into them. So to me, it almost seems like a lot of these beat 'em up games are being introduced or reintroduced or revived. Why do you think that is? And after this, like what other series do you think are starting to be revived a lot more?
Yeah, you can't see me right now, but I'm nodding along like, yes.
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 Exactly.
I think the reason you see a lot of games like beat 'em ups come back is because there's none of them around right now. For the most part, I don't think new beat 'em up games are really coming out, or if they are, they're not getting huge hype.
I don't think I could name a beat 'em up past the Bouncer on PS2. Like sincerely, I don't think I could name a single beat 'em up after that that's not harkening back to an original series.
That's a good question. I don't know if I can either. Also, I thought the Bouncer was kind of hot garbage.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a good game, but I mean, like, I'm agreeing with you. You're right. Like, that is a genre that I just don't really feel is around anymore. So, yeah, I think you're right. You're probably right. Like, it's probably because we don't see them.
Part of me thinks that it's because the series reached its apex. The beat 'em up genre was really good in the arcade for sure. It was pretty solid on the SNES and the Genesis Mega Drive, and maybe from there we just didn't, as gamers, a gaming community, we just didn't need to do it anymore because it was kind of perfected. I mean, you could say largely something is happening like that with the shooter genre right now. First-person shooters are pretty much stagnant. They're not doing much new. So maybe it's time for them to go and get something else in its wake, and then we can harken back to old-style shooters later.
Yeah,
I feel
you're
like that's
right.
probably what happened with beat 'em ups.
A lot of these shooters are starting to introduce RPG elements to try and liven them up. So yeah, it's kind of evolve or die and then be revived 25 years later.
I know. I can't wait to play. What's a good one? Overwatch Origins in 2045.
I was thinking,
like, wow, remember this game?
Medal of Honor.
Yeah. I remember Call of Duty.
So other genres that are being revived, I personally see, because especially in the indie world, Metroidvanias, tons of them. We talked about Bloodstain. I think that's the purest because, you know, it basically has the Vania in there. Two other ones that are standing out to me, Axiom Verge and The Messenger. Why do you think what is it about Metroidvanias that's really giving them this whole revival where they still harken back to an original game? Because if I said Axiom Verge, what game would you say it harkens back to?
Yeah, Metroid.
Okay,
for sure.
And The Messenger.
The Messenger, I've only played The Messenger for like maybe 2 or 3 hours, but I thought it was more of like Ninja Gaiden than anything else.
Sure, it's kind of a little bit of a hybrid there, but it really hits it. Why do you think that is?
Honestly, I think it's because those games, The Messenger, and I can speak for Axiom Verge and especially Bloodstained, I feel like they take the core idea of that older style game, make it good like it has been, but also make it a lot easier in a sense. The newer style Metroidvania games that you're talking about have generous save systems. They have ways that you can progress your avatar strength further so you can become stronger, which makes the game inherently easier. There's fun things to explore. There's achievements. I think all of these things make it really fun as a gamer to go through and play that old style game in the new modern setting and get that fun experience. For me personally, I remember playing the original Metroid on the NES and thinking, man, this game is great, but hot dog, I could never beat that game. So being able to do something similar now, 20, 30 years later, and actually being able to complete the game, enjoy it, not have to look up any guides, and just feel very satisfied, that's a pretty cool feeling. So games like that, I think, elicit that feeling and harken back to that sort of old style.
I think a part of it too are people are really huge into openness in video games right now, and I think these games have the illusion of openness where you don't realize
Yeah.
these are linear games. Like there may be a couple different ways to complete a story, but for the most part you're on the track. But because you get to break off and branch off and go multiple ways, like I'm playing Hollow Knight right now, and you know, you get to go wherever you want. Their bosses, for the most part, you fight in the order that you deem worthy as long as you have the abilities to get there. But at the end of the day, you know, you're still going the same way. So you have that freedom to be like, you know, I don't feel like going this way right now. Maybe I don't feel like I'm ready for it. I'm going to go this way. And I feel like that really plays in that people's interests of choice and choice mattering and really having the control over that.
Another genre that I've actually seen a lot of, and maybe you would agree with this in terms of retro revivals, platformers. I feel like the platformer has been on a steady rise lately, and you see a lot of it nowadays.
Are you thinking more like action platformers or more traditional platformers like Mario?
I'd say action. I guess I'd say action platformer is what it is. For me, I feel like the first time I saw an action platformer come back and I'm like, wow, this really makes me think of an older game this is in college actually, so you were there, when they released Rocket Knight on Steam, and it was
I know Rocket Knight. I love Rocket Knight.
Yeah, it's a sequel of a Genesis game, and I was like, oh, so cool. Granted, the game wasn't that great, but at least it was there.
Hey.
Okay, whoa, okay. I'm not saying anything about the Genesis one. That game was fun. I'm talking about the one on Steam. It wasn't as good.
Okay, fair.
Okay. Anyways, if I'm looking at really crappy games that got remade, I don't know why there's 2 new Bubsy games for some reason. I don't know how this happens.
What? So,
yeah, dude. So
okay, yeah. Describe a Bubsy game, because I mean, like, I think I was 6 or 7 when I played that game. So some of our listeners may have no idea what Bubsy is.
Oh my god, jealous of them. So Bubsy was by a company called Accolade, and it was made during the
plot twist. They didn't get any accolades for their games.
No, they did, because the first game's not like terrible.
That's not an accolade. You made a mediocre game.
Your game wasn't terrible. It was kind of made as, I would say, maybe a parody of other action platform and mascot platformers, definitely of the SNES Genesis era. So Sonic the Hedgehog, Mario, Crash Bandicoot, things like that.
But it was like the Garfield of those.
Yeah, he was very satirical, had a lot of like punny words and things because he's like a bobcat. But you still run around, you jump on enemies, you collect power-ups, you collect yarn balls. So it's the same old that you would expect. But the issue was, after the first game came out, there was a sequel which was just kind of blah, and then a really terrible, infamous PS1 3D port. But the series has just died, and it was kind of known as just a silly sort of, I don't know, 1 or 2 off game series that has nothing to do besides being a little blip on the record of gaming history. But then you jump forward to, I think, 2018, and I think it was a Kickstarter that brought it back for some reason. And like, I don't know why, but the game got 2 new sequels, and it just seems really strange. Like, why are people, A, funding it to make a new game, and then B, buying enough of it to make another one? But it just seems very strange. So there's that aspect of platformers. But if we're looking at the good ones, I would say for sure you're looking at Sonic Mania, and then the Crash Bandicoot and the Spyro new trilogies. And if we're looking at sequels, Crash Bandicoot 4.
See, I don't know if those really fit retro revivals though, because when I'm thinking retro revival action games, I'm thinking like action platformers, I'm thinking Mighty Number Nine, I'm thinking Cyber Shadow. Cyber Shadow came out this year or late last year, and
Wait, I don't know Cyber
Cyber
Shadow.
Shadow is a lot like the Messenger, only it's a lot less Metroidvania. It's a lot more Ninja Gaiden. So I think it's a little bit more true to the Ninja Gaiden part. Like there are some Vanias parts to it, but I think it's a little bit less explory and a little bit more straightforward.
Okay, wow, I never heard of that one. Thanks for the update.
So yeah, so I was thinking that those games, because they're like those spiritual successors of those games, where when I think of Spyro's, you know, and Crash Bandicoot, they've made some appearances and things. Weren't they in that like PlayStation beat 'em up game that's basically Smash Brothers?
See, it's funny you say that because they should have been, but they weren't.
Oh, yeah, like seriously, I would say for me, for Sony, those would be the two more notable like mascotty characters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there was licensing issues in there. But to your point, Crash Bandicoot never really did go away. Like he had all the games on the PS2, there were some 360 games, yada yada. And then Spyro did technically have some Game Boy Advance games, and then of course Skylanders came out. But maybe to clarify, the new remakes, or rather collections, and then Crash 4 are kind of a return to the series proper. So jumping back to the games from the 90s and making the gameplay just like that, as opposed to making it new or some sort of new mechanic.
So this being RPGaymer, I feel like we always talk about those like really classic games that we played when we were younger, and like when we were younger, there weren't many RPGs. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like these fun pick up and go action games were a lot more frequent. Now people don't want those games as much because they end very quickly, and you
Yeah.
know it's almost not worth the money with games being so expensive. So I've noticed a few spiritual successors in RPG land that I want to talk about as well. One I'm hoping to play soon, and that's Bug
Mm.
Fables. Are you familiar
Wait,
with
bug
Bug
fables?
Fables? Do you know what it is the spiritual successor of?
Uh, uh, uh,
Don't look it up.
no.
It is the game that you never played, but apparently you bought when you were with me, which I remember you talking about in episode
Oh,
one.
so it's one of those 1,000 games. Got it.
It is Paper Mario. It is cool.
Okay, okay. To clarify again, I did play these games. I just did not beat all of
Okay,
them.
sorry, you did not beat it. But yeah, I watched a review for it again today because I'm like polishing off a game or two, and I'm like, is this the next game I'm gonna play? I'm really, because I'm playing Hollow Knight, so I'm all about bugs right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, so it is getting really great reviews, and it's really funny because in all the reviews everyone's literally like, it's so Paper Mario it hurts, but
Aw.
it's still its own game, like in a good way. It's like they basically ripped everything, but they still made it its own. So definitely something like to be excited about in terms of RPGs and like spiritual successors. Another one that kind of didn't make it very well,
Mm-hmm.
I Am Setsuna.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that wasn't super duper great.
No, I mean, like, I really feel like it was a little play on trying to revive Chrono Trigger.
Chrono Trigger. I
Yeah,
agree
and
with that.
I mean, like, and it's the same company too, so it's not like it was an external group making it. But yeah, that game was
Mm-hmm.
sadly a flop.
What about Bravely Default?
See, I thought about that, and I know we talked about how it is a spiritual successor of Final Fantasies. I just didn't really want to beat Bravely Default into the ground. So, yes,
Mm-hmm.
I do, and I really do think that it is really harkening back to those old Final Fantasies, because Final Fantasy has like just gone strictly more along like the steampunk science fiction side, which is totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think of where Final Fantasy started, Bravely Default really scratches that itch.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I love Bravely Default. Have you played the second one yet?
Oh yeah, I have it.
Oh,
I played
jelly.
it for about 15 hours, and then it slowed a little bit for me. I don't know. For me it depends on how many RPGs I'm playing at the same time. And if I'm playing like three, which I know sounds ridiculous, but like sometimes I just do that. That's how I am. I'll put one down and I'll just come back to it later, and I'll pick up something a little bit like quicker. Okay, so I think that's pretty good for games that have been, or genres that have been revived. maybe we should talk about what features are being revived. I kind of want to hear like what the old games were doing that have been inspiring new games.
I think the biggest thing the old games have done that inspired new ones is just existing. And by that, I mean, no, literally, I mean, there are so many retro looking games nowadays. It's pretty great. So you can do anything from a huge one as Shovel Knight, the 2D graphics, Undertale looking like that. I mean, even a 3D game like Minecraft. I feel like the idea of harkening back to older style visuals is not a retro revival in a sense of being a game, but it's definitely something I just see a lot of.
Oh, yeah, it's a nostalgia bomb.
It's everywhere. Yeah, absolute nostalgia bomb. And I think that it just says something when you can look at an entire way of making a game based on the only way to make a game from the 90s and, you know, even earlier, coming back as a sort of way to like develop and make something new and different. I think that's pretty cool.
So I can't think of the name of the game, and maybe our listeners in the comments can kind of like throw it at me, because I have a long list of indie games. I'm not going to look at it right now while we're on a podcast. But there is a game that is 5 retro games. And it's like an indie game that they made, and basically it harkens back to old style racing game, but it also harkens back to an old style RPG, but also harkens back to an old style platformer. I think it's very like Sega in its nature, but I just can't think of the name of the game. But you're right. It's like you just look at it, and like you just said, it just all the other games inspired by existing. They didn't really have to do very much, but you look at that and you're like, oh, they're calling back to the classics visually.
Yeah, you can look at it and be like, I bet that game plays like this, and you're probably right.
I think simplicity is really a big thing that has inspired a lot of these retro revivals. I think a lot of the games from big developers right now, they're really great, but there's a lot of complexity to them. And I know for people like my husband who are more like, you know, a pick up and go gamer, they don't like to sit there and have to figure out the mechanics. They just want to like play and enjoy and not worry about the nuances. A game like, and I think I told you about this when we were just chit-chatting about what we were going to be doing. It's called Gato Roboto. And
yeah, you told me.
Yeah, and it's a Metroid inspired game, but like you're a cat in a robot suit, and you just shoot things and everything looks like it's in the Metroid universe, so you get the reference. And it's so like the power-ups are so simple. You don't have to worry about special commands, you don't have to worry about leveling up. And I really think that's why it works, because it's a really simple game and it's not expensive. And I think that's one of the reasons why the beat 'em ups work as well, because anyone can pick up Streets of Rage and have a good time. Like I could give the controller to my mom and be like, yo, let's bust some thugs. And she could do it. Like, it's just not that hard.
Pick up and play and simplicity is a really good topic. I think it really harkens back to the older style of games, because you only had a few buttons, or you could only do so much with a game's mechanics. It's limited by the actual hardware. So being able to look at a game and know that's probably how you do that is, one, really good design, but two, it's also just playing off of the nature of games that we've had for the past, 30 years? I feel like we as a society of just the human race and people that have
of gamers,
of gamers, they know what to do. Like if you see something up there, like that might be an enemy, I don't want to touch it. So you know you have to jump over it. Like that's kind of what Mario told us. And that's neat. And I think it's the logical evolution nowadays to see games like Mario, for example, continue to do those things in a really effective way. And then games like, what was the game you said? Gato Roboto?
Yes.
Taking the mechanics of that and adding cats, which should be a thing that people do to begin with. In
every game should have a playable cat, and it can't permanently die. It's the only character that I will ever say that, like, because I'm okay with permadeath in games. Cats can't die,
but the cat
can't die.
Okay, yeah. 9 lives. It's actually infinite lives.
Yes.
Anyways, where was I? So a game like Gato Roboto can take those mechanics and had fun with it. It can be someone that probably developing the game played the older ones that it's inspired by, and really just runs with it with what they probably wanted to see or a cool mechanic they thought of. And it's pretty awesome. If you are a person that has played games in the 80s and 90s and you still play them now, and you enjoyed the games in the 80s and 90s, you're in such a good time right now, because you're getting the best of every world.
So Jason, I need to know for you, what are some of the big winners that are retro revivals?
Big winners. I know some losers.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. Don't worry, listeners. A big one I want to talk about that we haven't discussed yet in this podcast is Donkey Kong Country Returns. I really like that. And I think for me, it comes from just growing up and absolutely loving, especially Donkey Kong Country 2 on the SNES, but all three of those games. So seeing that return to form on the Wii and Wii U, and technically the Switch, has been a really big and exciting kind of game series to see come back.
Sure. I have a couple as well. I have Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 1 and 2. I actually chose those over Ritual of the Night. I think Ritual of the Night is just okay, but I love the original Castlevania games. And it's funny because I like Metroidvanias more, but Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon 1 and 2 are just so great. Like they're just so classically good and fun. If you're more in the RPG mood, I think Pillars of Eternity, it is like a huge accomplishment if you like old D&D games like
D&D, Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, games like that. And XCOM.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I remember playing Terror from the Deep when, like, on a really, really, really old computer. I feel like it wasn't even a CD. It might have been a floppy game. I'm sorry if that's wrong, but it was a long time ago. And then never heard from XCOM again. I think there was maybe one game after that, and all of a sudden, bam, PS3, XCOM, and like that game is just so great.
It's so good.
But that's the thing about it. It's a facelift, but it's still the original game. Like you just pick up that game, and if you've played the original one, it is still so referential. Like you see all of it if you know the original source.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just like they just skipped a few generations and the game just picked right back up where
exactly. Okay, so flops.
Okay, we already talked about flops, or this one flop I should say. Mighty Number 9 was my big disappointment.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's my number one.
That's my number one. That's why I was like, I got flops. I know them. It's so easy. You mentioned earlier I'm a big Mega Man fan, and I love it. And I was so ready for Mighty Number 9, and it was a Mighty Number no. It wasn't good.
More like Mighty Number 2.
Oh,
that's one that I just literally stayed away from because I'm like, oh god, they're taking forever to make this game, and it's just a Mega Man game. Like it can't be. Yeah. It can't be that hard to make this game.
Exactly, and I think that there are plenty of examples of games that are just like okay as a remake. Coming to my mind is the Gauntlet Slayer edition. That series is great. I loved it. And I feel like that game came out on, I think it's on PS4, Xbox One. And it wasn't bad. It just wasn't that great. So there's lots of those. But if I'm feeling of other major flops besides Mighty Number 9, I also wasn't really impressed at all with, this is a really random one, with Fighting EX Layer, if you've played that one on PS4. Okay, so it's essentially, it's a fighting game, and it's by Arika, a company that used to work with Capcom, but specifically they helped make the Street Fighter EX series of 3D Street Fighter games. And those games aren't terrible. They're actually kind of fun, and it is very easy to see that the company can make a competent fighting game. And this one isn't terrible. It's just not really that good in any sort of way. Like, it's still a fighting game. There's still characters that are fun, but it just doesn't have the magic or sort of the feel of the older ones. And it could be because it was trying to mimic Street Fighter EX, but you can't be Ryu and Ken anymore, and maybe that's what really made it fun. But it was a disappointment. I remember seeing it coming out and being really hyped for it, and then playing it and just being like, oh man, this kind of sucks.
I think you're right. I think I've never played this before, but I get excited about games when I see familiar characters, and I grew up on Streets of Rage, so when Streets of Rage 4 came out, I was like, oh my god, Blazes and Axel are still in there, this is very exciting. So if those characters are taken out, then it just kind of loses that appeal.
Definitely. What are some of the games that you thought were big flops?
So we talked about Mighty Number 9, that was my number one, and I Am Setsuna, same thing. I think that's a hard one because if we didn't have Chrono Trigger, I don't think it would be as much of a flop because you are comparing it to like the god of
One of the greatest games
the
of
god
all
of
time.
games basically. But
The god of games.
the one for me that really stuck out, and this is an older one, but in 2008 Alone in the Dark came out.
Oh, I don't think the 360 one.
Yeah, I
PS3.
think it was very early PS3, Xbox
Mm-hmm.
360. I Alone in the Dark was the first survival horror game I ever played, also on PC, and I
Yeah.
do credit Resident Evil for the one that like maybe like push the fear of horror games, but also the interest. But Alone in the Dark was the one where like terrified me. Like I was in the fourth grade and I would just shiver and shake when my brother would play, because that was when I was just like, nope, 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 nope. It's so scary. And I don't know what they were trying to
Mm-hmm.
do in the 2008 revival, but I mean, like that was not Alone in the Dark. I don't know what that was.
I actually have not played any of those games. I'm not super duper into survival horror, but I'm
Sadness.
pretty sure. Sad. I'm pretty sure I remember reading a funny review that the new Alone in the Dark 2008, you had to press buttons to blink in the very beginning.
I don't even know. All
Yeah,
I
there
know
was
is a
some.
burning building. That's all I know.
Yeah, it was something like you wake up and you have to hit X to blink, and the reviewer's like, "So if I just don't hit it, I just stay here." And so it was just kind of funny. Like
It's like
that's my experience with Alone in the Dark.
it's like a Doctor Who episode. Don't blink.
Don't blink. Yeah, but it's like not good.
So Jason and I thought this would be kind of funny. It's not quite on topic because we're talking about things that need to be revived and revivals that didn't succeed very well. But we thought it'd be kind of funny to talk about just in general series that need to die.
Definitely.
So I'll go ahead and start this out. And we're sorry to if we offend anyone, because that's not the point of us doing this. We're just talking about games that maybe we're not fans of. But Sonic needs to die.
He's on my list too.
Yeah, so except there was a revival for the old style in Sonic Mania. Sonic Mania is a really good game.
It is.
Yeah,
Really good.
so what I basically have noted is he's just not meant to adapt. He needs to stay in his lane. So kill every other version of Sonic that isn't a 2D side scroller. Maybe find some ways to make it more fun, like try out some different things there. But aside from that, like no more Sonic games outside of his wheelhouse.
Agreed. If I'm gonna jump in and get another hot take that don't at me
hot take.
hot take. I don't think there should be any more standard Pokemon games.
Oh, I had that on there too. Yeah, please don't kill us. Please don't kill us. No hate mail.
I just think that I brought it up earlier in this podcast. That series has just stagnated for literal decades. And oh man, I want to see so much more from it. So maybe it needs to go away so that if they're going to make the same game again, I can be excited when it comes back in like 3 or 4 years. But like a yearly installment or even every 2 years, and there's 2 or 3 of those games, it's old, man. Come on, Nintendo, you can do a lot more than that.
I will say, I agree with you, and I've purchased and played every single main title Pokemon game. I still love them; they're adorable. But I was not excited about Sword and Shield. I wasn't. I was a little excited about Sun and Moon, but I think it was still a little bit of a letdown. But what I am very excited for, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's the Pokemon game that they just announced, where you're building the Sinnoh decks. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm thinking of like the Legend of Arceus.
Yes,
like the
that one.
Breath of the Wild one.
Yes, I'm excited for that because
called.
this could be, a new path for the series if they do it right. People have been asking for it for a long time. Again, I still play Pokemon Go, but I feel like I'm more just addicted than I am interested, if that makes sense.
you're not enjoying it. You're just playing
I'm there
it.
because my brain is programmed to recognize it and consume, not because it's really enjoying it. It's like when you're eating a snack like popcorn and you have a huge bag in front of you and you're about halfway through and you're like, oh, I guess I should keep eating, even though your stomach is like, bro, you're gonna be so upset in the morning. Yeah.
If I'm looking at one last series that I think should die, I'm going to cheat a little bit and kind of pick an entire developer. I think that pretty much every style of Ubisoft game also needs to die. I mean, I'm a fan of Assassin's Creed.
Oh my god, we literally have the exact same list.
Really?
Yes, I have Assassin's Creed on there too.
Okay, I'm a fan of Assassin's Creed, Far Cry. Like, they're all super great, but I really want them to do something different. If I want to compare it to a company that I think did something really well with their series to make it adapt and different, even though they're continuing number by number sequel, I would look at Capcom and Resident Evil. So jumping from 3 to 4 is quite different, and then 6 to 7, and then even 7 to 8, it's making the series stay relevant by doing what it does best. So switching once the story got stagnant in 3, the story elements or Code Veronica, they switched to the more action based in 4, which everyone loved. And then when the action kind of died out in 6, they jumped to more of the horror again in 7. So I think it makes a lot of sense. But with all the Assassin's Creeds, even though they get progressively kind of better in a sense, they're all the same thing. It's always the same idea of running up somewhere and unlocking areas and moving to the next one and blah, 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 blah. I really just want them to either stop doing that or focus on something else. Give me an RPG story. Give me a fighting game. Something else that makes it feel like I'm playing a different game than the same game over and over again.
Yeah, evolve the genre, guys. Come on. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, listeners. Patrick and I want to hear what you all think. Which game series need retro revivals? Or maybe, which series need to be laid to rest? We'd love to hear your thoughts over on our Instagram at HeyRPGaymer. And with that, we are going to take a quick break, but we will be right back.
So Jason, I gotta ask, what are you playing right now?
Oh my god. I don't even know what I'm playing. This is unscripted. I actually have been enjoying some older games lately. So on my own personal Twitch at Downstab Jason.
Hey, no pitching until the very end of the show, Jason.
Anyway, I've actually been trying to set up some new HDMI cables for older consoles. So I ended up playing a Stall. It's a platformer on the Sega Saturn. Have you heard of that one by chance?
I don't even know what a Sega Saturn is.
No one did. So it's a platformer, but it's if I said it's more like of a cinematic platformer, maybe that makes sense to you. Like you don't really jump around as much as you do in a Mario game. It's really more strategic. So you would have to make sure that you're jumping in a way that you avoid the enemy, but also land in a way down the path that you can jump to the next area, so you like can make it safely.
So it's kind of like Limbo. That's kind of like pops in my mind when you say kind of like a visual platformer where there's like more maybe not so much of a puzzle element to it, but that kind of vibe.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's not as physics based for sure. It's more of it looks really pretty. Although I feel like at the time of release, which I think was 1994, maybe 95, I feel like it was just what the game could do. It wasn't like trying to do anything more. It was just that's all it could handle. Anyways, the game is very, very pretty. So the backgrounds are actually still really impressive to this day. And you have really big sprites for a stall and the enemies. The game's kind of unique in that you don't really have like a distanced range attack. You kind of have to run up to enemies and like throw them to defeat them, or you can jump on them. It's neat. And it has very dynamic boss battles. They're all very different, and I like that. It gives you a sort of sense of difference in gameplay. It's not the same thing like I need to hit the boss's head to defeat it. You know, sometimes you have to throw a giant like what was it, pea pod or something to defeat this big plant. Sometimes you have to jump over
poke it in the
boss
butt.
Exactly. Sometimes you have to jump over the boss and let them run into a wall, kind of like King K. Rool would do in Donkey Kong Country. So it's fun. The only real drawback, besides the game being incredibly expensive nowadays, is that it's quite short. You can probably beat it in like an hour, which I did on stream. So you could watch that earlier.
Yeah, everybody needs those types of games every once in a while.
Totally. What about you? What have you been into?
Well, as mentioned earlier in our first segment, I am currently playing Hollow Knight. I would say I'm about 2/3 of the way through. I am not the greatest at precise technical games. However, I will boast as I've only been defeated by one boss, and that's Hornet. And I don't know what it is about her, because I fought her twice now, that it makes it so like, why is she so tough? But like, she's just so tough for me. I don't know what it is about her attack pattern. Maybe it's just because her little
Yeah.
shouts are so cute. Every time,
You're getting distracted.
yeah, every time she makes her little shout, I'm like, oh, ah,
Aw,
yeah.
hey. Aw, hey. It's kind of like that scene in The Simpsons where Ralph puts the mailbox flag down and he goes, aw, and he lifts it up and goes, ha 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 ha. Then he puts it down again and goes, aw.
Yeah, but I'm a lot more adorable. You know that.
No, you're just Ralph.
I'm in danger. But I really like it. I wish that I had done it as like a full stream just so people could watch my embarrassments, because, you know, I'm also a mediocre platformer of that genre. Like, I'm a good Mario platformer, but outside of that, I wouldn't say I'm the greatest, but I've made it through a lot of the pitfalls and whatnot. And it's just an overall great experience. Like, I really know why it's such like a high caliber, well received game. You know, people really love it, and there's good reason. It is great. And even Scott, when he's sitting next to me as I'm playing it, he's like, wow, this game is beautiful. The music is beautiful. The combat is stunning. It's just overall a great game.
Definitely. It's definitely one that's fun to stream, and I don't mean that to be a plug for our stream, but if you are looking for a game to watch someone else play, that's a
Yeah,
fun
I would
one.
say that would be the one. Welcome back to our discussion on retro revivals. Here we are in segment 2, and as usual, Jason and I are going to play a little game. We debated what we wanted to do this time. We actually had a little controversy. One of us wanted to do some retro trivia, while the other one really just wanted to go back and talk about what revivals that we want to see, like what we want to see revived. So we decided, why not both?
Why not Zoidberg? Why not both?
Why not both? So, in Soviet Russia, Game Revive You. So we decided that it would be fun to do a kind of like trivia game, but instead of asking just a direct question about a game that we want revived, instead we do it as a poorly described game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure people are familiar with poorly described things. They do it for movies and books all the time on Facebook. Your parents have probably been a part of one.
If you're not sure what it means, it would be like if I wanted to describe Super Mario Brothers to Patrick. So I would say something like, really bad plumber decides to save girl. But that's actually, you probably know what it is. But it's something like that. Instead of saying like, he destroys the Koopa King and the Mushroom Kingdom. Something like that.
So what we're going to do is the first clue, because there'll be a couple, will be describe the game very poorly. Then if the person can't get it, we'll give them a specific content related question or hint to give them a little more of a direction, because it could be hard depending on how poorly it's described, or maybe it's not a game that Jason or I actually played. And then because we didn't want to say like, hey, how many Dreamcast or Sega RPGs do you play, blah blah blah, you know. And then if they can't get it from there, we'll describe something about the series or the platform it was on, and then if the person gets it or not, we'll boo them or congratulate them and then say why they want that game revived.
Definitely. I think if I'm getting my tracking right, I believe I went first last time, so you're first on this
Okay.
one, if you wanted to try to get me to guess, or I can make you guess mine, whatever you wanted to describe as what's actually first.
So I'm very proud of a few of these. Like, I was very nervous at first when I started doing it, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I feel good about this. But then I don't know what it hit me, like the Lord blessed me with the might of poorly described things. So here we go. Okay, this is my first one. So this is my poor description of this game. Oh, shooting star at night, are you a distant comet here to grant my wish? Or that cow I launched shooting through the ether?
Wow, yours is way more poetic than mine are going to be. I'll let you know right now.
Just wait, motherfucker. Just wait.
Oh my god. I mean, I'm thinking of the cow I launched through the ether. I mean, I can only think of
Earthworm Jim.
Oh yeah, okay. that was one of my preliminary lists, but I did not make a thing for it, so I appreciate that. Oh, I get it now. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah,
I like it.
My other clue would have been his main catchphrase is groovy, because whenever
groovy,
then he's literally been to hell and back.
Literally. I feel like if I'm thinking of Earthworm Jim, man, the sorry, this is gonna be a tangent, but the stages where you would have to chase, what's the evil crow? What is his name? The
I
bad
don't
guy?
even know, but the in
Man,
between stages,
yeah, where you're on the rocket ship and you're trying to chase him. I loved that music. It was so
or
funny.
when you
I loved
actually catch him, like the
it.
yeah, so good. That's just one of
That's
those
great.
games that I feel like it's just so stylistically done well that like you're just in on something special. I wouldn't say that the
Hmm.
game itself was truly great. Earthworm Jim 2 was just a little bit better, like they would always push it.
Yeah,
But you saw a lot of different elements in games that you didn't see in like action platformers. Like there's a level where you have to safely escort dog puppies across a stage, or you have this underwater level where you keep on smashing this little vehicle that you're in that's made of glass into the walls, or
yeah,
you have one where literally you're just the worm, right? You don't even have the suit.
yeah. It's like they took the worst level of the original TMNT game on the NES and decided let's make a stage out of that, and you can't touch the walls. It was great.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's just good. Your turn.
Okay. So be prepared to have nothing as extravagant as that, but I
Well,
feel
be
like
prepared for a lot more extravagance in your future.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Okay. For my first one. Popular medium creations tear each other apart. That's it. That's all you get.
Popular medium creators tear each other apart.
Popular medium creations tear each other apart.
Clay fighters.
It is Clay Fighter. Oh my gosh, I'm surprised. I was like, oh, that's a clever one. Okay, so if you, because I wrote it and I'm going to give you all this content. My other one was imagine if there was a Nightmare Before Christmas fighting game of sorts. That's my other
I
clue.
think what really drove it
then-
in for me was the fact that my last question was Earthworm Jim, and Earthworm Jim is in that game.
I know, man. He's in that game. I was like, this is a great segue, and I did not plan that. So I've just been an absolute fan of that series, and I think it was from the SNES when it first came out. But really, it's probably the sequel on the SNES, Clay Fighter 2, that I liked a lot more. I played it with my brothers. It was funny at the time. I was a young kid, so like seeing bad Mr. Frosty and throw snowballs and people get cut in half and the blob like punch you and turn into a punching like boxing glove. It was just really funny to me, and I thought it was great. Honestly, the combat's kind of terrible.
I don't think it's
but
that bad.
Okay, well, let me clarify. The combat's really fun, but it is in no way balanced.
Sure, well, but you have to
So,
think like, and it's an early fighter, first of its kind. It's not doesn't have the
Yeah.
time of refinement like Street Fighter and Tekken got. You know what I mean? Like it was.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, it didn't. And there was a third game on the N64, cleverly titled Clay Fighter 63 and a third. And it was pretty good. Like it wasn't. I've played worse fighting games. I'll put it that way. But I don't know why. Ever since then, the game series never came back. And I think it's Interplay. I think they're
That
even out
sounds
of
right,
business.
yeah.
So yeah, that's probably what it is. But I always talk about that. If somehow you have gotten to Hey RPGaymer and you are a follower of Downstab, and before that, my previous blog, Slick Gaming, you will know how much I love Clay Fighter and I appreciate you. I always talk about that series on my wish list for games to come back, and I really would love to see it again.
My childhood friend and I used to play the shit out of that game. So magically, somehow, Robert Elliott, if you are listening to this podcast in Canada, please note I miss you. I miss playing that game with you, and we had a lot of fun. All right. Is it my turn?
It's you, man.
Okay.
I'm ready for this poetic.
This one's not going to be
description.
as poetic, though you will have one coming that might be a song.
Oh, what,
Okay,
like-
this one's going to be a lot more straightforward, but I think you'll be able to get this one.
Okay.
When they told us to bring squirt guns and soda cans, I thought we were headed to a barbecue, not trying to avert the apocalypse.
Oh my god.
I was afraid you were going
Say
to
it
pick
one more-
this game.
Say it one more
When
time.
they told us to bring squirt guns and soda cans, I thought we were headed to a barbecue, not trying to avert the apocalypse.
Oh. blah 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 blah. Zombies ate my
Zombies
neighbors.
ate my neighbors.
Yeah.
Did you have that on your
the
list?
game that no one. I did not, but it's the game that no one can ever actually beat because it's too hard.
It's so hard. My clue for it was
that game.
2 words.
Yeah.
Giant baby.
That's what I was thinking. Because when you were like the apocalypse, I'm like, well, that baby was kind of hard.
So Zombies Ate My
Oh,
Neighbors was a top-down action game, and you were 2 kids, and you had to rescue a certain number of civilians per level, and you would fight against all kinds of twists on classic horror stories, but it was still like cartoony, so it's not like it was graphic, but you would fight against zombies with squirt guns, and there were like possessed dolls, and your weapons, some of them were like jokes, like squirt guns, and you'd throw like soda cans that would explode like grenades. But some of them were real, like you had a bazooka, you had a weed whacker, so it's just funny. Like that game is just so much fun.
Man, that game would absolutely be amazing nowadays. Like, even I think it's only 2-player multiplayer. If you just did 2, 3, or 4-player multiplayer online, PS4, PS5, that game would be great.
Absolutely. All right, your turn.
Wow, man. Now I wish I had.
I literally thought you were gonna pick that.
No, I didn't. My list is extensive, but it did not include that one. Okay, let's see. You ready? This is a tough one. I feel like. Okay. One engineering family's journey to devastate a capitalist family of geniuses.
One more time.
One more time. One engineering family's journey to devastate a capitalist family of geniuses.
No, I'm gonna need a second clue.
No worries. This one was a little out there. This time around, there are no stages to select, but there are still plenty of robots to defeat. I have more clues if you need.
I think I need more clues. I don't know if I know this one.
It's okay. This is a 3D PS1 spin-off game. I'm just going to keep reading them off till you get
keep going.
This is an incredibly rare slash expensive sequel. This spin-off has a spin-off of its own. There was a failed 3DS revival project backed by hundreds of thousands of players. Characters from this game appear in the fighting game Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Oh, is it
Characters look like anime Lego figures.
It's Tronbon, right? Tronbon?
Mega Man Legends. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
You got it.
Once you said that. Okay.
So I feel like the poorly describe it, that's a big stretch, because like technically the game starts with Mega Man escaping, like, or getting out of a dungeon, I guess you can call it, and then the Bonds like find him and try to like steal his stuff, like his like artifacts, but the rest of the game for some reason it's just Mega Man and family kind of ruining that family's entire existence, even though they're really just capitalists, and I think it's kind of funny.
I played the first one, and I would definitely say like Mega Man caters to being like a Zelda-esque game. I think those games could have been much better, but I do feel like I could see this. Like I could see this being an actual genre or series, you know?
Totally agree with you. I think that it was a really good pivot from the Robot Master fighting of the original Mega Man series to an actual RPG of sorts. And like you said, it could be a lot better, but there was definitely enough character and charm in that series, which was, it literally just took Mega Man and like kind of stretched the idea of what he could be, and then everything else was brand new. But it still kind of felt like a Mega Man game. And in the vein of Paper Mario, it had a sense of humor. It did something different, and it wasn't afraid to try. And I really appreciate that in a game series. All right, man. Hit me.
Okay. I'm saving my best one for last, and my best isn't the most fun. This one might stump you. We'll see.
Okay.
I don't know if you've played this or not, but you are familiar with it at the very least. All right. Mm-hmm. The irony of comparing this game to an exciting chessboard is that at some point you actually fight on a chessboard.
Is Harry Potter? The irony. Read it one more time.
The irony of comparing this game to an exciting chessboard is that at some point you actually fight on a chessboard.
Man, I'm thinking it's got to be some sort of real-time strategy game.
Here, do you want me to read my second clue?
Actually, yeah, go ahead.
Whoever thought that a bunch of teens would make up an army is beyond me. Also, the army's name is the title of the game.
What? Army of teens and a chessboard.
But at some point, you actually fight on a chessboard.
Yeah. I got you. Man,
Okay,
I bet it's something. I bet it's something like I'm like, oh, of course, and I can't think of what it is. Yeah, if you want to keep going.
this is my last clue, but this might be the dead giveaway. It was and I'm using quotation marks, it was the other system's response to a genre that, at the time, wasn't well represented. This game was incredibly well received, but the series didn't find much success from here. So it was the other system's response to a genre that, at the time, wasn't well represented.
Dang. Man, I don't know. Gosh, I'm not sure. I might have to tap out on this one.
Tapping out on this one. I feel like this one's a little tough one, and that's why I was trying to hit the kind of like being on a chessboard. You were on the right track with what type of genre did you say it was?
Like a real-time strategy or something like that?
Not real-time strategy, but it was a strategy.
What system?
Sega.
I was thinking Sega. Okay. Admittedly, I did not play a lot of Sega. Dude, a game with kids? No, I don't know.
Shining Force 2.
Oh, bro, I was thinking Shining Force. Oh my God.
Shining Force. I put specifically 2 because I think 2 is the better of the games. But the Shining Force series was my first romp in tactical RPGs. And in some ways, I like the vibe that it created as much as I like Fire Emblem, because we didn't get Fire Emblem until Game Boy Advance in America. So that's why it was the other system's response to that genre. And they did it really well. And Shining Force 2 is like a really fun game. I'm really excited that when they created the Sega classics, that it's on there, because a lot of people get to experience it, and it's just like such a great RPG.
If it's anything like, I've actually only played the very first Shining Force, and I did beat that game.
What?
If it's anything, I don't what. If it's anything like that game, I feel like it's one that people of the genre will really enjoy. It's pretty cool.
Actually authentically better, because it's livelier. Like, everything is just brighter. It's a lot more refined. There's not as much room for error in character growths, because character growths in the first one were random.
Random. Which kind of
the story, because you get to like adventure out on a large map, like the characters have personality a lot more. It's not just kind of like your filler hero that doesn't say very much. There's just a lot more to it. It's great. Like, it's a really good game.
Legit. Yeah, oh man, that series.
All right, your turn.
Oh, okay. I like this one. You ready? Old American icons are remade by Japanese to determine which is strongest.
Old American icons are remade by Japanese
to determine which is strongest.
I feel like this one should be really easy.
I can keep going with some other clues.
Yeah, give me another clue.
All right. Vampires, werewolves, and zombies. Oh my.
Is it a fighting game?
It is a fighting game.
Is it Bloody Roar?
Oh, it's not Bloody Roar. It's an arcade and PS1/Saturn origin.
I don't know if
It is I think you know what it is. It is. I'm gonna read my last two clues. It's based off the Street Fighter 2 arcade engine. It's actually made on the CPS2 machine. If you know what that is.
It's that game with who's the vampire that's in Marvel.
It features horror icons. You're on the right track.
It's Marvel. It's the one from Marvel vs. Capcom. I just don't know that it's the name of the series that she's from, right? It's the vampire girl.
Yeah, you're thinking of Morgan, and she's from Darkstalkers.
Okay, yes.
Oh, so
I feel like we played that once in college. Like, you pulled it out and we played it for a little bit, and then we just never really did it again.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I actually bought Darkstalkers 3 at Disc Replay over in Lafayette, and that's probably the best / most well-regarded game in the series. But it was also the last game, and I think that came out in 1999, something like that. But Darkstalkers, for those that don't know, it's a one-on-one 2D fighting game. It actually is based off of the same Street Fighter 2 engine, so it kind of plays like that. It's essentially the same type of game. But it gives a sort of horror icon like motif around it all. So instead of like duelists of different fighting ninja art styles, you have like Dimitri, who's a vampire, Morgan, who he said earlier is a succubus. You have Anacharis, the big sarcophagus mummy dude. Um, all kinds of
I
really
always
cool
wondered what
characters.
he
It
was
has
from.
yeah, it's from that one. They have a sort of gothic feel to everything, and really why I think it's super cool. Besides being different, it's a really pretty game. It has amazing backgrounds in it. The fighting mechanics are solid. It's Capcom, it's Street Fighter, but everything just looks really smooth, and I absolutely love the style. I think that Street Fighter gives a good, if you will, quote, realistic style to fighting games, but this one is just straight up fantasy, and it's really cool. And I absolutely would love to see a Darkstalkers 4, just like Street Fighter 4 came out years ago. That would be a dream.
Fun, 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 fun. Okay,
Your
my
turn.
turn. How does that boat fly without any propellers? Oh well, yo ho, a sky pirate's life for me.
It's got to be
Yeah,
Skies of
Skies of
Arcadia.
Arcadia.
It was maybe too easy, but I'm glad you
I just
brought
wanted
it
to do it because I mean, like, it is really just a diamond in the rough of RPGs, especially with it coming out on the Dreamcast. The fact that they were like semi remastered it or revived it for the GameCube. Such a great. Did you play it?
I did. Yeah, actually only on the Dreamcast.
Such
Though.
a great universe that they built. Such a great game. My other clues were going to be it was the main duo made another appearance in another series where War Never Changes.
They're in Valkyria
Chronicles,
Chronicles.
and I was gagged when I played Valkyria Chronicles and I saw them in there.
Yeah.
Like it is.
Vice.
Yeah,
what?
it is so like that's great. But that RPG is just one of the best. It's just so much fun. Like if you're an RPG person and you like classic turn-based, you like a good element system, you like really well written characters, you like fun excitement and adventuring in an airship right away, which is not something you often get in games, and then airship battles, which the airship battles were super fun. It's just a great
cool
game.
All right, so my last one I have for you. This one it's a little weird, but it's near and dear to my heart. Go left, then go right, then go left and splash around. Get to the finish line first.
What the fuck?
Go left, go right, then go left again and splash around. Get to the finish line first.
Is it a swimming game?
No. I can give you more clues if you want.
Please.
Okay. If Mario Kart were a lot more wet.
It's not Diddy Kong Racing, is it?
It is not, but that's a good one though. I can keep
Yeah,
going.
please.
This series originated on the original Game Boy.
Oh.
There is arguably the most popular entry on the N64.
Wave Racer?
Wave Race. Yeah,
okay.
you got it.
Okay.
Oh, dude. I know no one else listening to this is going to care whatsoever.
You're right, they don't.
I loved Wave Race. That game was so fun. And the Game Boy version is kind of blah, but the N64, Wave Race 64, and then Wave Race Blue Storm, which was a launch title on the GameCube, more so the 64. Just loved it. And I think it was super cool because it showed off both those games actually show off the power of those systems, but it's just really cool. And the music is super good. It's just really fun I know it's really just going left and right between these slalom style races, but it's really cool to hit the waves, do your spins, like dive under the water. You can race with dolphins. It was really cool. And I felt like as a game, it was probably really just kind of a racing tech demo for the 64, but I loved it. I thought it was an amazing title. So you level up by getting
No, I was being sarcastic. It sounds boring to me.
Skill in the game, and then you realize I'm better than that person next to me, and you feel superior.
Okay, so you get an internal experience points.
Yes. It's not a digital like upgrade experience, but you know what? To be fair, they probably should do that because in the games you have stats on your racers and the jet skis they use, and I don't see why you couldn't create a player mode or something where you can actually upgrade your stats. Or those games where you like get money and you augment your car to go faster. You might as well do the same thing and just go go ham on the
That's
wave
that
race.
kind of side mechanic we were talking about, where some games they kind of like lose their appeal after a while because there's not too much extra going on, and those are those little additions that could really like make people buy into it a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. Like in Wave Race 64, I can only race on the Drake Lake so many times before I'm like, yeah, it's foggy, I get it, but it was still fun.
Oh,
All right, you have one bonus one for me, I heard, right?
yeah, so bonus round. I'm a little nervous about this one because it's going to require a
Oh my
little bit of
god.
singing. I was
Okay, I'm
I
ready.
was super proud when I when I came up with this. So, are you ready?
I'm ready than I'll
Okay,
ever
this
be.
might take a couple of takes, so get
Okay.
ready. Oh, he flies with a rocket, and a possum is he. He fights with a sword made by Konami.
Is that it? Okay. Um, I mean, a rocket blasting sword possum. It's gotta be Rocket Knight.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you said that earlier on in the episode, I was like, oh no. Don't ruin it.
To be fair, even if I didn't say it, I would have gotten it immediately. It was just sung so
My
well.
cousin and I, he owned it, and we played that game so much. And it is so much fun. Another like action side scroller game that's just so great. And I feel like they could really add a lot more to it. But the music was really incredible. You got these really
Yeah.
cool levels where it's not quite to the level of a bullet hell, but like you're flying with your jetpack,
Yeah,
and it's
right.
just there's a little bit more to it. And I feel like the enemies are pretty cool because they're all pig knights.
Yeah, they're like, yeah.
Now I know that it had a sequel, and that was actually my side clue. Was his name is actually the title of his other game on a rival system. Do you remember what the other game was called? Sparkster.
Sparkster.
That's his name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So do you said you like Rocket Knight? You didn't like Sparkster. Why was that?
Uh, so I think the Genesis one is called Rocket Knight.
Yes, it's
Adventures.
Rocket Knight
Isn't that
Adventures.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I liked that game, and I don't know if I ever played Sparkster, but I did not like Rocket Knight, which is what they called the sequel in 2010
Ah,
or
I
whatever.
see.
I thought that was just okay. Like they took the ideas of Rocket Knight Adventures, but just didn't implement them in a way that felt smart. It was just kind of like meh.
Well, I love this game, and it is incredible. And it is another one where like I'm usually let's do RPGs, but that's one of them where I'd be like, I would love to see this game. Like this guy is just so great. He deserves another
Yeah.
one.
Agreed. Well, if you don't mind, Patrick, I do have 4 other games that I didn't write these things for, but they were on my list of titles I wanted to bring back, and I can just read them off to you if you want to hear them. So my other titles that didn't get the treatment we just went through were Gauntlet Dark Legacy, specifically that version of the game. I absolutely love that game, and it deserved more. The beat 'em up genre got represented in Double Dragon. It should get a new remake. I would love to play that series.
Yeah, it's kind of silly that it hasn't.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that with games like Streets of Rage 4 and then the
Battletoads.
yeah, exactly. Games like that coming back. Hopefully we can see Billy and Jimmy come back. I actually debated between Wave Race and F-Zero for a game to come back on this specific podcast. I mean, I want them both.
F-Zero will come back. You know it will.
Dude, it's been like 20 years. So I just don't know. I really feel like with F-Zero and Wave Race, and Diddy Kong Racing for that matter, I feel like Nintendo just has their racing genre is Mario Kart, and that's what they focus on. And I don't blame them. It's probably the best one of that series, or that genre, but it's just like, I'd like to see more. And then the last one, which Laura and I both agreed on, Space Channel 5 needs a comeback.
Okay. I actually had two as well. I didn't think you would get them, and I struggled to make clues for them. So the Phantasy Star series, not the online, but like the original games, especially Phantasy Star 4. That is the best RPG on the Sega. It is incredible, and the way that all the scenes would come up like comic panels. And I know we did our episode on the first time I cried during a video game. I won't give spoilers away, but I actually, now that I think about it, that was the first time I cried in a video game.
And you're right, I probably wouldn't have got Phantasy Star, but I absolutely love Phantasy Star Online.
I never played it. And then the other one was, you know this series, you just probably never played them, was Lufia.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're right. I have not played that one, but I don't think I own any Lufia games.
Lufia is just a pretty solid RPG puzzle game. Turn-based battles. The second one specifically is the one that was the puzzler, and it is claimed as like probably one of the best 10 RPGs on the Super Nintendo. Which the Super Nintendo, like, that's a pretty tight list.
It's got
a tight
yeah.
list to get into like the top 10 of.
That's the list you want to be
seriously.
on. Yeah.
So it is also just like the world that Lufia takes place in is great, and I know it had some games after, and I know they tried to do a remake of the first one or the second one, I guess, but it just wasn't. They're just not good. Like, let's see a true revival of that series.
Wow, that was a lot of fun. I'm really glad we were able to do that. It was neat to think about these games that hopefully we see one day, but we might never see them again. But Patrick and I want to know what you all think. Let us know the game series that you want to see come back. If you can randomly think of any fun trivia or ways to poorly describe a game, that would be really impressive. And I want to hear that too. Let us know over at Twitter at HeyRPGaymer and on our Instagram, also at HeyRPGaymer.
Gamers, thank you so much for hanging in the nostalgia and the retro revivals. If you enjoyed listening to us today, be on the lookout for our next podcast on how to be a Twitch god. We will introduce our first guest speaker to the channel. Jason and I appreciate you all for listening and hope you have a great time. Now go out there and get gaming. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I'm gonna leave that in.